the president gave a State of the Union address last night, and there was a little bit of talk about the budget and certainly talk about tax levels and tax reform. And Governor Daniels, in his response to the State of the Union, touched on those things as well. And so I really think there are two things to focus on. One is this tax discussion and the discussion of tax rates and tax deductions and loopholes. And then we should also talk a little bit about how the State of the Union and the response frame the budget choices that we're really going to be talking about in the run-up to the election. So give me a brief rundown of what the difference in the tax discussion was between the two parties and the president and the governor.
Well, I think President Obama reiterated his position on tax policy that he's emphasized ever since he's been in the administration. I think he talked about the fairness issue most of all, and the need for higher income Americans to bear more of the tax burden. And I think there's a lot of consensus for that. The Bush tax cuts, the 2001 and 2003 tax cuts, certainly changed the distribution of the tax burden in favor of higher income households. So for a long time we've been debating about the extension of the Bush tax cuts. Fairness always comes up in that. There's also a broader issue of fairness that even if, regardless of what we do with the Bush tax cuts, if we let them expire or extend some of them in the next round at the end of this year, there's the issue of, do we want to change the definition of taxable income under the current income tax? A lot of economists believe that a lot of the tax preferences, the so-called tax expenditures in the federal budget, benefit primarily higher income households because they're the ones that bear the largest burden in terms of the income tax. So that's one of the most promising areas for reducing the role of government and the amount of spending, effective spending the government does in a progressive manner. So I think the president was hinting at that. There are many different ways of raise the tax burden on higher income individuals. It doesn't have to be through increasing tax rates. It can be through broadening the tax base.
And I think one of the things that the contrasts really was that the president talked about making sure the rich pay their fair share, but he also introduced a whole host of new deductions and extended deductions and bigger deductions. And I think one of the valid criticisms of that that Governor Daniels made was really you're talking about raising rates and increasing all these deductions when really what we need to do is simplify the tax code. And really, there is actually beginning to be a consensus among Democrats and Republicans that you need to limit these tax expenditures or eliminate them completely, and then have also a discussion about rates for upper income and lower income and how the distribution is.
Well, broadening the tax base is good from a fairness perspective and from an economic efficiency perspective. It seems inherently unfair to give special preferences to certain forms of income or certain types of businesses or certain characteristics of households. So broadening the base is a fairness issue, but also there's an economic incentives issue there as well. A lot of economists don't believe that tax incentives actually have that strong of an incentive effect, that often what you're doing is rewarding behavior that would have occurred anyway. So that's why looking at who benefits from those tax preferences is so important, to say, are these preferences worth their cost? You look at who's benefiting the most from them.
Because we give that kind of scrutiny to spending programs a fair amount. Does this spending program, is it worthwhile? Is it achieving its goal? Is it wasteful? And really we need to start doing that with the tax preferences as well.
Right, and both the president and the Republicans and the Democrats in Congress as well, everyone has lately been talking about and becoming more aware of the way we spend money through the tax code, through these preferences.